Good evening. Atma Namaste. Welcome to this short talk on the Wesak. You know that it's coming next week. It's an important event. It's one of our major events of the year. And tonight might be one of the better times to bring up this subject matter and say something about it. What is the Wesak? If you question a lot of things, there might have been a time when you question what was the Wesak before the Lord Buddha was born. You know, the Wesak is the day, they say the Lord Buddha was born on a full moon. So the full moon of Wesak is the day that the Buddhists celebrate the birth, the enlightenment, and the death of the Lord Buddha. So it's an auspicious day for Buddhists and for spiritual practitioners who believe in the teachings of the Lord Buddha. But before the Lord Buddha was born, was there a Wesak? The month of Vaisakha in the Hindu calendar, from where we derive the word Wesak, was already there. The name of the month was already there. Now, the full moon of Taurus was already there. We're talking of before the Lord Buddha was born. So the Lord Buddha was born maybe 643 BC. Some books say maybe he was born earlier than that, 1500 BC, or somewhere in between. Although the general consensus now is, at least as far as the some books or many books have stated, is that the Lord Buddha was most likely born in 643 BC. So before that, and for a long time, the full moon of Taurus has always been there. The month of Vaisakha in the Hindu calendar has always been there. It may have been called a different name, but that particular month was always there. The seasons have always been there since civilization began, or even before. So it stands to reason that it must have been significant even before it became Wesak, even before the Lord Buddha was born. Don't you think? Now, in a similar vein, for example, what was Christmas before the Lord Jesus was born? So December 25, for the Christians, they say that's the day they celebrate as the birthday of the Lord Jesus. But before the Lord Jesus was born, that's what, 1 AD, before he was born, what was Christmas? What was December 25? So many of you may know that it was called Candlemas. December 25 was Candlemas, which the pagans, according to the Christians, they were pagans. The pagans were celebrating December 25 as Candlemas because that was the day of the winter solstice. So it was connected with the seasons. It was connected with the lunar cycle, with the position of the sun and the stars in the sky. In ancient times, they were very particular about calculating the exact time when to perform certain rituals. It has to conform with certain astrological configurations. The stars must be in the right place, the moon must be in the right place. They were very particular about this. And somehow, as civilization has grown, emphasis has been lost on the timing of these rituals. So you have the full moon of May being celebrated as Wesak, even if it's no longer within Taurus. But if you follow the ancient tradition with understanding, the full moon of Taurus is actually the better let's not say correct. It's the better day to celebrate the birthday of Lord Buddha. So, if Christmas, December 25th, before the Lord Jesus was born, was celebrated as Candlemas, was celebrated as the winter solstice, was considered an auspicious event. Then similarly, Wesak, before the Lord Buddha was born, was celebrated as the full moon of Taurus. It was still an auspicious event. Now, why is Taurus special? What is the significance? It is like this. If you take a look at the calendars, the ancient calendars, for example, the Hindu calendar. Hindu calendar, they say, is a lunisolar calendar, meaning it's based partially on lunar cycle, it's based partially on the solar cycles. There's a reason why calendars use both, no? There are some calendars that use predominantly the lunar cycles. For example, I think the Islamic calendar is based on the lunar cycles. It's a lunar calendar. The Gregorian calendar, what we use now throughout civilized world, January, February, March. The Gregorian calendar is basically a solar calendar. Now, what's the difference? A lunar calendar would be accurate in determining the start and end of a month, because the cycles of the moon determine when the month starts and when the month ends. For example, new moon could be the start of a month. The last day before the next new moon could be the end of the month. So it's accurate in determining the months. The problem is, if you have 12 lunar cycles, symbolized by the 12 full moons for the whole year, if you total all the days of each lunar month, a lunar month takes about 29.5 days. If you total all of that, 12 times 29.5 is less than 365 days, meaning it's less than a solar year. So 12 lunar months is several days short of a full solar year. So that's why some calendars, they use, like the Hindu calendar, they use the solar cycle to fix the beginning and end of the year, and at the same time they use the lunar cycle to identify the beginning and end of the month, of every month. So the Hindu calendar, which is probably one of the oldest calendars, and is similar to the calendars they use in ancient Babylon. The Hindu calendar starts with the months that would be the equivalent of March and April. Vaisakha is supposed to correspond with May, April, May. Vaisakha is the second month in the Hindu calendar. So if Vaisakha coincides with, it almost coincides with Taurus, that means the first month is Aries, the second month of the year is Taurus in the Hindu calendar. Now, the more recent Roman calendar, from where we have derived the Gregorian calendar. The Romans developed the Gregorian calendar from the Roman calendar. The Roman calendar, the original Roman calendar, had only 10 months. 10 months. December, Deca, was the 10th month. November, Nove, was the 9th month. October, Octo, or Octa, is 8th. September is 7, Sept is 7. Now, August was actually called Sextilis, which is the 6th month. July was actually called Quintilis, which is the 5th month. Okay, the first 4 months were March, April, May, and June. In the Roman calendar, the first months were March, April, May. Okay, so that's similar to the Hindu calendar, where the first month is March, the second March, April, the second month is April, May. Wesak is April, May. So why did these older calendars start the year in what is now the equivalent of March? You might be wondering, where did January and February go? Now, please consider the Gregorian calendar is a recent invention. Recent, relatively speaking, compared to the Hindu calendar and the other older calendars. January and February are additions to the 10 months of the Roman calendar, so that it will fit the 12 lunar cycles. So, the beginning of the year in ancient times, based on ancient calendars, the beginning of the year started in March. March, April, May would be the first quarter of every year. The beginning of every year actually coincided with the months associated with spring, the season of spring. Okay, and it makes sense, because if you end in winter, winter is when you sort of, nature, at least in the northern hemisphere, nature sort of hibernates. The animals sleep and hibernate. The plants retreat and go deep under the ground. So they wake up, it's the beginning of a new year. They wake up in spring, so it makes sense, logically, that the beginning of the year should be in spring. I'm not campaigning to change our calendar, but just for purposes of argument, you could say it's a good thing to start the year in spring. Okay, so the spring months are March, April, that period, April, May, and May, June. This coincides with the first three astrological signs, no? Aries, Taurus, and Gemini. So these three full moons are the full moons associated with spring, and they start the year. Okay? Now, how do you start the year when you've just gone through winter? Obviously, you need to wake people up, and this is not just waking people up the normal way. Nature, to some extent, the animals, plants have been asleep for about 3 months, no? Because winter also takes 3 months. So if someone has been asleep for 3 months, of course it doesn't make sense. No, they would be in a coma. But if someone has been asleep that long, you need to wake them up in a special way. You can't just clap your hands and say, "Hey, get up." It has to be done in a particular way. So the purpose of spring is to wake nature up. And to wake Mother Nature up, you need a special energy. You need energy that is intense. You need energy that is creative. You need energy that will thaw the frozen earth. So that is the job of the season of spring, to transition the planet Earth, the northern hemisphere, from winter to summer, when things are more easy. When things can grow. So the job of spring is to bridge this gap, and to bridge this gap, they need special energy. So that is the reason why the full moon associated with the spring months, the full moon of Aries, the full moon of Taurus, and the full moon of Gemini. That is the reason why these three full moons are extremely important and extremely auspicious, because the energy there is greater than the energy of the other full moons of the year. Why? Because the energy in Aries, Taurus, and Gemini are needed to jumpstart Mother Nature to wake up the hibernating life, the animals and the plants that have been put there by winter, meaning they had no choice. So to wake them up, you need the energy of growth, the energy of renewal, and that is the energy of spring. And it is distributed throughout the 3 months via the full moon of Aries, the full moon of Taurus, and the full moon of Gemini. So this is a theory that before the Lord Buddha, before the Lord Christ, before Wesak became what it is now, before Christmas became what it is now, the full moon of Aries, the full moon of Taurus, and the full moon of Gemini have always been important because of the role they play in bringing about the transition of Mother Nature from winter into summer, from sleep to wakefulness. So if we meditate with the full moon of Aries, with the full moon of Taurus, with the full moon of Gemini, we partake of the energies that are being showered to Mother Nature in the northern hemisphere. Because in the southern hemisphere, it's the opposite. Huh? But in the northern hemisphere, where majority of the human population was in the past, and probably still is at present, the energies are on the upswing in Aries, in Taurus, in Gemini. So if we join in this meditation, we join in that energy, we benefit from that energy. So it is important that out of all the full moons of the year, it is important that we shouldn't miss full moon of Aries, full moon of Taurus, full moon of Gemini. This is if you are particular about conforming to the accuracy of the ritual since ancient times. Otherwise, it's still okay to meditate on the other full moons of the year. There's nothing wrong with this. It's just that if you want, a certain degree of accuracy, then that is what you do. Meditate. Do not miss, rather, meditating on the full moon of Aries, the full moon of Taurus, and the full moon of Gemini. Now, Aries is associated with the fire sign, which makes sense that you lead off with a fire sign because the earth is frozen. The northern hemisphere is frozen. It's coming out of winter. You need a fire sign. So Aries is there to sort of warm up and thaw the frozen earth. Not just the physical frozen earth, but the energy aspect. Because when animals and plants, when nature is in hibernation, the energy is sluggish. In spring, the energy starts to wake up, starts to become vibrant. So you need a fire energy to gradually wake up the world, wake up Mother Nature. Now, in Taurus, the next month, the next astrological sign, the energy becomes more intense. So Taurus is associated with the earth sign. So presumably after the earth is thawed, you need to plow the field, you need to till the field, you need the bull, you need the Taurus to prepare the land. So you need more forceful energy than the energy used to thaw the frozen earth. Before, if the earth is frozen, you sort of thaw it first before you cook it. Okay, so a type of energy that is strong but not too strong, intense but not too intense, and then you gradually increase it, you ramp it up on the next month, in the next astrological sign, in Taurus. So you start with energy in Aries, which is stronger than other months of the year, and then you make it even more intense in Taurus. So of the three, the energy of Taurus is the most intense. That's why it's significant. Even before the birth of the Lord Buddha, or the celebration of the birth of the Lord Buddha, full moon Taurus was always important because of this particular factor. Then you have the third full moon, the full moon of Gemini. Gemini is an air sign. Air sign is connected with discernment, with identifying what is good and bad. So Gemini is associated with assessing and planning. So after you thaw the earth, after you plow the field, you need to assess and plan what crops to plant, what when you plant, if you plant now, when will they be harvested? How do you segregate the plants? Like what kind of plants in one area, what kind of plants in another area? Like if you plant corn here or barley here, where will you plant the fruit trees? Where will you plant? Where will you plant the other stuff? So there has to be a certain amount of planning, a certain amount of assessment of what has been done. So here you need a lot of energy also, but not as much as the energy you needed in Taurus. So in Gemini, the energy sort of tapers off, but it's still more powerful than the other months of the year. So this is the reason why Taurus is special and significant. It belongs to the spring, the spring season, the spring months, the spring astrological symbols. And spring is an important event as far as Mother Nature is concerned, because it is a time for starting new things, starting anew. It is a time for renewal. It is a time for growth. So I hope this short explanation will, if it hasn't yet, will encourage you not to miss meditating on the full moon of Aries, on the full moon of Taurus, and on the full moon of Gemini. Now, why do we celebrate the Wesak with the great invocation and the meditation of Twin Hearts? Now, with the meditation on Twin Hearts, it's understandable because that's what we do. That's one of the core meditations in Grandmaster Choi's school. But why the great invocation? Most of the organizations, the people that follow the teachings of Holy Master DK through the Lucis Trust, no? They do the great invocation on all the full moon festivals of the year. Yes, especially on Wesak. But what about us? In Grandmaster Choi's school, why do we include the great invocation during Wesak? Now, if you read the words of the great invocation, you might find some meaning there, though it would be even more helpful if you read other sources, other books, theosophy books, books written by other authors, so that you'll have a better mix of information, so you can understand a little bit more of what the words refer to. So, for example, the first two stanzas refer to the point of light, the point of love, from the mind and from the heart of God. So you in your mind's eye, you're probably imagining, okay, the mind of God, the point of light, going to the minds of all men. Imagining the heart of God, the point of love, going to the hearts of men, including, of course, women, including everybody. No? These were the words written in those days, so they're no longer under our present standards, no longer politically correct. So from the point of light within the mind of God, the light streams forth into the minds of all human beings. From the point of love within the heart of God, love streams forth into the hearts of all human beings. So if you look at this, it sort of says God can transmit directly His intelligence, that is the light, and His love, directly from God to the minds and the hearts of human beings. Okay, so there's this there's a direct connection, a direct line. Of course, we know that in the inner world, energy from God, the blessings from God, are actually coursed through the higher beings down to the spiritual practitioners like us and the rest of humanity. Because the energy from God directly given to a human being would be too intense and too powerful to contain. It would not be safe. So we know that that process happens. But when you come to the third stanza, you will see there from the center where the will of God is known, because these three go together: light, love, and will. No? But the third stanza doesn't say from the point of will within the will of God. It doesn't say that. It just says from the center where the will of God is known. Let purpose guide the little wheels of men was the original phrase, but of course it's now corrected, so it's more inclusive. No? So the purpose of the let purpose guide the wills of the human race, okay, of humanity. So if you look at these first two lines, you start thinking, okay, it's slightly differently worded from the first two. So why? Now, if you read and get background information from other books, you will realize that the phrase "where the will of God is known" is actually refers to a specific place. The center where the will of God is known is Shambhala. So in the third stanza, that's actually the first line. That's actually referring to Shambhala, the center where the will of God is known. So God's will is so intense that it can be destructive. You know, in the Hindu tradition, Shiva, God the power, is the symbol for will. God the will, God the power. So Shiva has destructive energy, which is needed in order to destroy the old so that the new can come about. So God's will is too strong and too destructive that it has to be coursed through Shambhala, the center where the will of God is known. Now, who is in Shambhala? Shambhala is the home or the residence of the Lord of the world, the Ancient of Days, Sanat Kumara, and his three assistants, the three Kumaras. So, according to the esoteric teachings, Sanat Kumara is sort of like the manifestation of God. No? It's like he is overshadowed by God, the planetary God. So he is, in the style which was popular at the time it was written. They say Sanat Kumara is and isn't the planetary logos. You know, it's very cryptic, but it means that they use an analogy. It means that he is overshadowed by the planetary logos. So God, the planetary God, expresses his will through Shambhala, through Sanat Kumara, the Ancient of Days. So that's how much the will has to be channeled and what is the word? It is downgraded. That's how much the will has to be downgraded so that it is safe to guide the wills of human beings. Okay? So that means in the Great Invocation, we are actually invoking energy from Shambhala, from Sanat Kumara, from the planetary God. Now in other books, they mention that Shambhala is a planetary center. It's a chakra of the planet Earth. center there, like energy center. So if you substitute center with the word chakra, Shambhala is a planetary chakra, and it is the most important chakra because in Shambhala you have all the spiritual beings there. You have the Lord of the world, Sanat Kumara, and the three Kumaras. You have the Lord Buddha, all the Buddhas, all the Bodhisattvas, all the spiritual initiates, including their disciples. They're all there in Shambhala. So it's a special place filled with special spiritual energy. So if you invoke Shambhala, you invoke the energy from that place. You're invoking the spiritual energy of the world. So going back to what we learned in pranic healing from the basic course, our etheric bodies are part of the etheric body of the earth. So the healer and the patient, their etheric bodies are part of the etheric body of the earth, and that's why we're able to heal at a distance. Now, if you continue that analogy, our chakras are part of the chakras of the earth. Okay? Now, which chakra would Shambhala correspond to in the human spiritual anatomy? It would be the crown chakra. So, if the planet Earth was a physical body, Shambhala would be its crown chakra. Okay? So the crown chakra is the center of goodwill and the will to do good. You have this in Grandmaster's teachings. The center for goodwill and the will to do good is the crown chakra. The center for where the will of God is known is Shambhala, the crown chakra of the planet Earth. The crown chakra of the being, to be more accurate, the crown chakra of the planetary logos that has the planet Earth as his physical body. So the great invocation is a fantastic prayer, bringing down during the time of the full moon extraordinary energy from the mind of God, from the heart of God, and from Shambhala. That's why we have the great invocation as one of the prayers that we do during Wesak and during the other full moon festivals of the year. Now, the last stanza refers to the race of men, the center which we call the race of men. Again, the word center can be interpreted as an energy center, a chakra. And what is the chakra of the race of men? So if you read other esoteric books, you will come to know that in the esoteric teachings, they consider the planet Earth as having three important centers. The Shambhala, we've mentioned that already, the spiritual hierarchy, and humanity. So these are the three centers that are of extreme importance as far as the world is concerned, as far as the entire planet Earth is concerned. Shambhala, the hierarchy, and humanity. So humanity by itself is actually a center, the center which we call the race of men is actually referring, that phrase is actually referring to a planetary chakra, which is humanity. And here we have to consider that there are concepts which are not logical to the human mind. Because when we think of center, it sometimes denotes or refers to a specific place. But in the spiritual world, an energy center does not have to be in a particular place. It can be spread throughout the world, wherever there is humanity. Or maybe in the inner world, all of humanity form one center, because in the inner world, we are all one. So that is one center. The race of men is considered one center. That is why in many religions since ancient times, it is always thought, that what affects you affects your fellow human beings. What you do to yourself, you do to your fellow human beings. And what you do to others, you do also to yourself. Because we are all one, we are all connected, we are one planetary center. Humanity is one chakra of the world. Then it stands to reason, that's the reason why we get a lot of blessings, because we are one of the important centers of the world, one of the important chakras of the world. And for spiritual practitioners like us, this is where it becomes important to purify ourselves, because as we purify ourselves, we are contributing in our own small way to purifying the center where the race of men, the race of humanity is known. As we clean and purify ourselves, as we evolve, we are also evolving the planetary center of humanity. I hope this is sufficient explanation why we have the great invocation as one of the core practices in our full moon meditations, especially on Wesak. One of the things that we always advertise in events like the Wesak is the energy. And of course, that's understandable because we are an energy school. This is our specialization. This is one of our what do you call it in marketing? Unique selling points. Our knowledge of energy, our knowledge of prana, our knowledge of the chakras. The energy aspect is always something important to us. So during the Wesak, you have the energy of the full moon, and that has been explained many times in the past. The earth, during the time of full moon, gets not only the usual regular daily dose from the sun, it also gets an additional dose from the moon. But the light from the moon that comes to earth is actually the light from the sun reflected by the moon. So on full moon day, or full moon week, if you want to be more inclusive, the earth is getting a lot more energy than at any other time of the month. Because full moon day and full moon week is 3 days before and 3 days after. So during the full moon week, the earth gets a lot more energy from the sun. So that's one batch of energies that come on the full moon. Second, you have the full moon of Taurus during Wesak. So that brings with it additional energy. What is the energy of the full moon of Taurus? That the energy of the bull, the energy of will, is there. Plus, you have to consider, as discussed earlier in one of my previous talks, Taurus is one of the first months of the year, one of the first astrological signs of the year. If the year were to start as it should in spring, that spring would start with Aries, followed by Taurus, followed by Gemini. So during the spring season, the energy of Earth is waking up. It's becoming more active. It's resurging because you have to wake up Mother Nature in the Northern Hemisphere. You have to wake up the hibernating animals. You have to wake up the plants. So the energy of Aries, Taurus, and Gemini are the energy of spring in general, are designed to bring about this resurgence of growth and renewal throughout the world. So that kind of energy, spring, the energy of spring, comes into the meditation during Wesak. Of course, it also comes during the full moon of Aries and the full moon of Gemini. But the most intense of the three would be the energy of the full moon of Taurus. So you have that as a second batch of energies that goes into the mix of energies that we have on the Wesak. Third, you have the energy of the meditations. You have the energy from the Great Invocation. You have the energy from the meditation of Twin Hearts. You have the energy from the mantra Om Mani Padme Hum. So these are three different types of energy. The energy of the mantra Om Mani Padme Hum is the energy of mercy and compassion, okay, forgiveness. The energy of the meditation of Twin Hearts is the energy of love and peace. The energy of the Great Invocation is the energy of divine light, divine intelligence from God, divine love, and the will of God as it is expressed or manifested through Shambhala, through the Lord of the world, through the assistants, the Kumaras, and through the rest of the spiritual hierarchy. So you have that as the third batch of energies that come in during Wesak. So you have the full moon energy, you have the spring, the season of spring, the energy of the season of spring coming in, and you have the energy of the meditations. Now add to that the energy of your own energy, because you do have your own energy in your chakras, which you bring into the mix. Now, of course, you see the need to thoroughly prepare yourself before you go into the Wesak, so that you have good energy to match the energy that's going to come in. No? So you're able to combine the energies more easily if you have prepared yourself and transmuted your energies into something more subtle. Now, these energies are what we, this is like the flag that we wave around. This is what we advertise, the fantastic energies during Wesak. Please join us for the meditation. But another aspect of Wesak, which tends to be given less emphasis, sometimes completely overlooked, is the importance of the teachings of the Lord Buddha. It is, after all, the celebration of the Lord Buddha's birthday, his enlightenment, and his passing away. So there must be some significance, there must be some importance why it has become an event where the Lord Buddha is at the forefront. It's not just his energy that is there during Wesak, because that's one of the things advertised in our Wesak meditation. The Lord Buddha's energy comes down as close as possible to the physical material world. It comes down up to the etheric planes, so that the transmission of energy will be as undiluted as possible, and the transmission of the teachings will be as undistorted as possible. That is the importance of and significance of having the Lord Buddha at the forefront of the Wesak event. But it is the energy that is again being discussed there. What about the teachings? So maybe it's a good time. Of course, you can do this at other times of the year, but on Wesak, it's a good time to be reminded of the Lord Buddha's teachings. It is a testament to the universality and the timelessness of the teachings of the Lord Buddha, that it finds significance even now when the whole world is going through a crisis. What the Lord Buddha has taught and promoted and disseminated from the time he achieved his enlightenment, and continued by his disciples and Buddhist organizations all over the world, still holds true up to now. For example, the teachings of the Four Noble Truths is still important up to now. First Noble Truth is that there is pain and suffering in life. Second Noble Truth is that the cause of this suffering is uncontrolled desire. The third Noble Truth is that there is an end to the suffering. And the fourth Noble Truth is that the way to end the suffering is to follow the Eightfold Path. Now, that is the traditional, probably the traditional way you would hear it or see it in the books. But you have to adjust it according to modern times. You could say the First Noble Truth says that there is pain and suffering in life. There is happiness and pleasure in life. Both things happen in life. One does not continue forever. At some point in time, it has to change. The other, similarly, does not continue forever. At some point in time, it has to change. You cannot have pain and suffering all the time, nor can you have pleasure and happiness all the time. This is life. Life is like this. It is both having pain and suffering. They're like two sides of the same coin. You cannot have one without the other. You have both. And it is there. It's a given. You can't do anything about it. You can't do anything. It is there. So if you look at the world as it is now, you have the pandemic, you have all the thousands of cases of people getting contaminated with COVID-19. You have controversies surrounding the vaccine, the creation of the vaccine, the distribution of the vaccine, the sale of the vaccine. Is it going to be available for all, etc., etc. You have I mean, if you go through the messages you receive on WhatsApp, on Viber, on social media, it's like for one whole year, sometimes you get the feeling, this is too much, this is too stressful. This is dukkha. This is what the Lord Buddha mentioned. Life is like this. This is part of life. But at the same time, it's not going to continue forever. At some point in time, things will improve. At some point in time, things will get better. And in many countries in the world, things are already improving. Things are already better. They have herd immunity. They have no community transmission at all. Life has come back to normal in some countries. In some parts that were heavily hit by the virus, things are slowly coming back to normal. So that's the first noble truth. Life is like this. There's pain and suffering. There's difficulties, and there's less difficulty. There's more difficulty. There's less difficulty. There's there's pain and suffering. There's less pain and suffering. There's happiness and pleasure. There's less happiness and pleasure. It's like this. So whenever we are confronted by events in life, it's whether good or bad. It's good to remember this is not permanent. This is not permanent. It will, at some point in time, it will change. The only permanent thing is change. Now, but if you look deeply into the way the Four Noble Truths are worded, you start wondering, why did the Lord Buddha emphasize dukkha? Why did he emphasize suffering? Why didn't he say there is dukkha and there is sukha? There is pain and suffering, there is pleasure and happiness. Why only dukkha? Because it's like, this is my theory, I could be wrong, so please take this with a grain of salt. It's like if you wanted to have reminders, you make only bullet points. So you choose, or if you have like flashcards, you choose key words, the important words. So between pain and suffering and pleasure and happiness, the more important word between these two is pain and suffering. Why? Because in life, it is the pain and suffering that teaches us the most. When you're having a good time, when you're having pleasure and happiness, when things are okay, things are going well, there's no pressure to learn a lesson because you're coasting, you have momentum, you just let the good times roll. You know what they say, you just continue what you're doing. But when there's difficulty in life, when there's an obstacle, when there's a hiccup in your plans, when things don't go according to your plan, when things go wrong, you're forced to learn the lesson. You're forced to stop, assess the situation. Why did this go wrong? You need to fix the problem. So in trying to fix the problem, you learn new things. And when you learn new things, you progress. So pain and suffering leads to greater progress than pleasure and happiness. So if you were the Lord Buddha, of course it's difficult to imagine, but if you're going to give bullet points to your students, to your followers, you need to emphasize what is important. And in life, it is important to take note of pain and suffering because they teach you the most. That means do not shy away from difficulties in life, face them, learn from them. Okay? And that is the message of the whole Four Noble Truths. There's difficulty in life, learn from them, learn what causes them. Yeah? The moment you learn what causes it, you find a solution. When you find a solution, it stops until it happens again. And the way to make sure that life is always on the upswing, it's always on the moving upward, you're always progressing. The way to ensure that despite the suffering in life, you're still moving up, the way to ensure that is to follow the Eightfold Path, which is basically to live life the right way. So, I could be wrong, but I think that's probably the reason why dukkha was emphasized. Because it was just a bullet point. We said, okay, this is more important than pleasure and suffering. Why? Because every time you have pain and suffering, you learn from it. You're supposed to learn from it. Don't run away from problems. Face your problems, solve them. That's how we learn, that's how we grow. No pain, no gain. If there's no pain, no gain, no growth. No growth, you are stagnant. So, translating this into our spiritual practice, as Arhatic yogis, if you have never experienced Kundalini syndrome yet, you haven't learned much yet, because it is through experiencing the hardships of spiritual practice that we learn the important lessons. If you haven't had a mental breakdown, if you haven't had an emotional outburst, you haven't been practicing Arhatic yoga, you haven't learned. But if you've gone through these difficulties in life, these personal difficulties, of course it's embarrassing to yourself, it's embarrassing to your friends and your family, but it's the events that teach us the most. And it's the lessons that stay with us, that stick with us the longest, because it comes from a traumatic, unforgettable, sometimes unforgivable past. So, let's keep in mind the Buddha's teachings. When you have Kundalini syndrome, keep in mind the Buddha's teachings. It's not going to be permanent. There will be good times, but you have to learn from it so that it will not happen again. Or if it happens again, it will be milder. And to ensure that your future Kundalini syndrome will be manageable, will not flatten you, will be manageable. Manageable meaning they will be tests, but they will be tests that will help you learn more easily. They will not be as traumatic as before. In order to ensure this, you have to follow the Eightfold Path. And if you have if you have attended Grandmaster's course on Buddhism Revealed, you know that the Eightfold Path is basically accurate perception, correct expression, and non-falsehood. So the Lord Buddha's teachings, the Eightfold Path, is already incorporated into the practice of Arhatic Yoga. It's good to be reminded of this. You know, our teacher, our guru, Grandmaster Choe Kuk Sui, he read from so many different disciplines and so many different sources. He had a very eclectic mind, and he was able to put things together, assemble them, so that it becomes more realistic and it becomes more grounded. So when you practice the virtue of accurate perception, you're practicing right perspective, right attitude, which is the first of the Eightfold Path. If you are practicing correct expression, the other half of the virtue of accurate perception and correct expression. If you're practicing correct expression, you're practicing right thoughts, right words, right actions, right livelihood and lifestyle, right concentration, right awareness, and right oneness. You would be practicing the Eightfold Path if you practice correct expression. So in daily life, we always try to think the right thoughts, say the right words, do the right actions, live life the right way, concentrate the right way, meditate, practice awareness the right way, and practice oneness the right way. So if you're doing this, you're actually following the Eightfold Path. You might already be a Buddhist and not know that you're a Buddhist. You know yourself as an Arhatic Yogi practitioner. Okay? But in all the teachings in the world, in all the religions in the world, in all the yoga, the different types of yogas practiced, including our own Arhatic Yoga, they may all be coming from diverse sources. They may all be teaching different techniques. But according to one martial artist, he said, he was referring to martial arts schools. He said, the schools are all different, but the message is one and the same. The message is improve yourself. Regardless of what organization or school you belong to, regardless of what religion you belong to or were born into, the message is the same. Improve yourself. And one of the fastest ways to improve yourself is to practice Arhatic Yoga. And while practicing Arhatic Yoga, the occasions when you learn the most is when you have dukkha, when you have Kundalini syndrome. Therefore, the more Kundalini syndrome you experience, the more you learn. The more you learn, the more you grow. The more you grow, the more you progress and live up to your highest potential. So, for the older senior Arhatic yogis who, during our time, we were there together. We were all scared of Kundalini syndrome. That we should not have this, we should not have it. So it's in our mind that we should avoid it as much as possible. And yet it still came. After it came and left, we look back and we say, that wasn't so bad. We're still alive, we're still here. And then the more you look into that event, you say, it's actually good, I learned something from it. So now, we need to adjust our thinking about Kundalini syndrome. It should be okay. We should not run away from it. It should be okay if there is some experience of Kundalini syndrome. Of course, if it gets really bad and extreme, it's not okay. But no matter how much negative karma a person has, the karma will never be so bad that you cannot get up and solve it. There is always hope. And if you have been practicing Arhatic Yoga, practicing all the 5 pillars, doing tithing and doing service, your negative karma cannot be that bad that you will be flattened completely. You may be knocked down on one knee or 2 knees, but you should still be able to get up. So if there is Kundalini syndrome, it should be an occasion to learn something new about yourself. It should be an occasion to upgrade and improve yourself. And if you're guiding the younger, newer batches of Arhatic yogis, let's try not to transfer our fear of Kundalini syndrome to them. We say that it's part of life. In any case, even if people don't practice Arhatic yoga, they still go through hardship. Why should Arhatic yogis be exempt? Right? If we're trying to become better, ordinary people are trying to become better, they go through difficulties and hardship in life. They go through dukkha. Why shouldn't Arhatic yogis be exempt? Why shouldn't we go through this as well? Why should we be exempt? We're the same human being. We're just doing more meditation and more practices than the others. So we should have more difficulties, right? And yet majority of Arhatic yogis I've come to know, it's not that bad according to them. They do have rough patches here and there, but it's not that bad. So if you're going through a rough patch, you have the Lord Buddha's teachings to help you get through them. These rough patches in life, these difficulties in life, they're not permanent. You'll get over it, no? Learn from it, so that next time in the future, if it does happen, more or less you have some experience in solving it. And practice accurate perception, correct expression, which is the Eightfold Path. Okay? So this is one of the reminders we all need, not just on Wesak, but maybe every time we go through difficulties in life. Think of the Lord Buddha. Okay? Atma Namaste. Have a wonderful Wesak.